Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Impact Review for the 11th of um, November 2021. Impact remains, I guess, a number three brand, but it's faltering. And while I continue to watch the show, sometimes I wonder why. It's certainly not as bad as the TNA days by far, but they struggle. But every wrestling brand struggles these days. Oversaturation of professional wrestling, plus a lesser talent crew than even 25 years ago, are two of the main problems. Anyway, Impact coming in, and of course we do a three-way for the world title contenders contest here. As kind of the main event or main angle on the show. BTI pre-show, Savannah Evans with Tasha Steelz defeats Rachel Ellering with Jordana Grace. Not a fan of the whole concept. Bullet Club, El Phantasmo, Chris Bay with Kudo defeat Finn Juice, David Finlay, and Juice Robinson to earn a tag title shot at the Turning Point, I guess, major event. Both teams have been going at it similar to the match these two teams have had in the past. Finn Juice starts pretty strong against Bay, but Robinson is in there. Akudo and Phantasmo start to distract him, and eventually they cut him off from his corner, which makes logical enough sense. Bullet Club then works over Robinson for a couple of minutes, and then this is mostly Phantasmo doing some of his basic maneuvers and such. But it isn't long before Finlay gets a hot tag. Finjuice then isolates Bay for this offensive series of maneuvers, and eventually goes for the Doomsday device. After distraction from the ELP and Kudo, Finlay then uh, ends up going back and taking them out, leaving Robinson into the ring, and ultimately gets reversed by Bay and super kicks ELP and pins him. After the match, Anderson and Gallows come out and brawl with the Bullet Club, ending with Nakuda taking out Gallows and Bullet Club controlling the ring. Then Gia Miller interviews Scott D. Moore about the three-way main event to find out the new top contender for the World Championship. She asked why Josh Alexander wasn't entered the match, and before Moore could answer, he was confronted by Alexander, and Moore tells Alexander that he wasn't getting a shot until he fixed his focus issues, so he's going to book Alexander versus Masaru Suzuki so he could deal with him. Later on, he could continue the chase for the uh, World Championship. I don't even begin to understand this logic, but anyway, we get a recap of last week's BTI when Sam Beal pinned Brian Myers. Afterward, we get an installment of Myers lessons, and then we have to grab my phone, so I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail for that benefit. And so, I mean, it kind of continues going forward. Nothing major, nothing great, nothing whatever. But anyway, I mean, ultimately, Impact has been hurt, I think, by the whole process here. Beal gets challenged to a one-on-one match with Myers. It is what it is. Masaru Suzuki defeats Caleb with a K. No real story to the match. Quick squash to showcase Suzuki. Caleb runs away from Suzuki at first and then tries to attack. Suzuki blocks him off and manages to take things and turns it into a submission. Suzuki then wins with the GSP. Alexander watches from the back. Miller interviews Moose next about his potential challenger's turning point. Moose runs down names, but in the end, he's only concerned about himself since he's the most dangerous man in professional wrestling. If he were that, he'd be in a better promotion. Decay, Havoc, and Rosemary defeats the Undead Bridesmaids, Kimberly and Brandy Lauren. Match comes about from the Knockout Tag Team tournament stuff, and that follows for a while. Match starts with Decay taking out the Bridesmaids, but Casey Lee and Jesse McKay come out. They interrupt, set themselves up on the ramp to watch the contest, and they are the main focus. Distraction, Bridesmaids able to get the jump on Decay, and they continue control, separating Rosemary from her corner. The Bridesmaids show some tag work with a couple of dispute. and they dispute with the newcomers. Rosemary is still able to get a comeback against Lauren, tags in Havoc. Decay then gets the win, bridesmaid with a backbreaker and a spear combo on Lauren, and then after the match, Inspiration comes down and to the ring, but avoids crossing paths with Decay. Heath and Rhino cut a promo about Heath's rough year, being out with an injury. Heath then said that the tension between them and Violent by Design isn't over. Rhino said he wants revenge and against Eric Young, so they challenge Violent by Design. Some people are saying this is a good promo. It kind of feels flat to me. But anyway, we then get footage from last week. Madison Rayne and Caleb complaining about losing to Mickie James. D'Amore approaches them and books Reigns versus Mercedes Martinez. Martinez is current number one contender for the Knockouts Championship with Mickie James. That's kind of cool, which ultimately leads to match itself being relatively, I don't want to say completely one-sided, but it's not good by any stretch of the imagination. Delayed vertical suplex by Mercedes with a near fall there. She then tries to follow up with a crucifix, and then Madison Rayne, escapes, hits a code breaker, and cuts Martinez off for a cravat and a couple of knees. Mercedes then comes back with a Tiger Driver with another near fall, follows with some strikes and then a short DDT. Rayne then gets a near fall with an Enzuigiri and a blockbuster, but couldn't keep her down in position. Mercedes then gets a win, jumping knee and a schoolgirl pinfall after the match. Rayne jumps Martinez, drops her with a ripcord cutter. She then attacks Martinez with a chair until James comes out and makes a save. I don't know. The match never really clicks. Steve McLean then cuts a promo talking about losing in the last few weeks, but then he says he's still unpinned and unsubmitted. He then said he deserves to be in the X Division title match at Turning Point. Trey Miguel comes out to confront him and tells him he wanted to get pinned. All he needed to do was ask Miguel then asked D'Amore to make it a triple threat match. Turning Point D'Amore instead tells McLean that if he can defeat Laredo Kid next week, he'd get added to the match. All of this chaos is just stupid. Anyway, Beal then addresses Brian Myers, accepts his challenge for next week, talks about learning so much from him and knowing that he'd followed Myers for months. He then tells Willie Mack and Rich Swann to stay in the back because he needed to take Myers on by himself. Rahat Raju and Ranjit Singh defeat Rocky Romero. I don't necessarily think that's good for business. And then we see footage from last week, Raju confronting Romero about the line of getting a shot for the X Division Championship. Both men are wrestling with some basic moves, mirroring each other's moves and the like. Match continues back and forth. Raju manages to hurt Romero with his back and arm and gain more and more of an advantage. Singh then also helps Raju, and every time Raju can distract the referee. Romero then makes a comeback with a bunch of lariats along the way. Hits a double foot stomp on Raju for a near fall, follows up with a backslide. Raju blocks Romero. Satellite DDT for yet another near fall. Raju then hits a near fall himself, flatliner, but also tries to capitalize. Romero then locks on the armbar, prompting Singh to distract the referee and takes out Singh and hits a slice bread. Raju still can't get the win. Finish finally sees Raju block a tornado DDT and hit a drive-by kick in a match that was okay, but I don't think the right guy won, and I don't think it's really that great. Anyway, Hernandez then takes Johnny Swinger and tells him that he'd ask D'Amore for a match. Demon and Decay next week, and Johnny Bravo brings in Falaba to be the third man of that team. Just feels like filler. Chelsea Green cuts a promo about becoming a new number one contender for the digital media title, so D'Amore books Green versus Jake Something versus Matthew Reinwald versus Alicia Edwards. The winner gets a shot at Digital Media Championship and Jordana Grace. Again, filler. Also next week, Knockout Tag Team Champions Inspiration versus the Undead Bridesmaids in a non-title match. Laredo Kid, Steve McLean for a spot at the Turning Point X Division title match, and the return of Deonna Purrazzo in the main event. Suzuki and Alexander will go at it. Your main event segment, Eddie Edwards defeats Morrissey and Matt Cardona to earn a shot at the world title match. After the main event last week, this comes together. Morrissey is the biggest man. Edwards and Cardona go after him first, and then take him out with the boots. He then tosses Edwards to the floor and works on Cardona in the ring. Edwards recovers and he hits Cardona and manages to take him down. Morrissey gets taken down for a bit, but Morrissey quickly recovers and takes down him with a double choke slam. Morrissey then maintains control where Edwards is kept out of the ring, works over Cardona. Edwards returns when Cardona has been taken to the floor, manages to get a little bit of offense in, but not much. Morrissey stops him with a fallaway slam. Edwards then makes a comeback and trades a bunch of strikes with Morrissey, but can't keep him. Just the discrepancy between the two is there. Cardona then and Edwards once again team up and then takes Morrissey down with a code breaker and a blue thunder bomb, but neither man can really take advantage to get a victory. Morrissey then drops them both with a double suplex, follows up a tower doom spot, and Cardona gets a near fall over Morrissey. Cardona then kicks out a black hole slam from Morrissey, and Edwards and Cardona finally get rid of Morrissey, sending him to the floor for the first time in the contest, and Cardona and Edwards exchange strikes. They dive out onto Morrissey. Back in the ring, Cardona misses an avalanche radio silence while Morrissey lays on the floor. Edwards hits the Boston Knee Party to Cardona for the win. It's clear that Moose and Eddie Edwards for the title at Turning Point is where they're going. Kind of flat and ultimately not that exciting. We'll be back with more right after this.